Hi guys, and welcome to my part 3 of 4 of my paper testing series. This one is about graphite, and I want to show you how graphite looks and works on different papers. In total this is 6 different papers. And if you're interested in other mediums as well, I have also done this paper test for charcoal, colored pencil and watercolors. So if you're interested in these mediums, please check out my other videos. They can be found on my channel as well. I did this video just to show you the difference how graphite in this case looks on different papers, where it is easier to apply, where it is a bit harder to apply, and what are the differences between these papers. I have set myself a goal that no drawing must take longer than 30 minutes. And it was not my goal to have a fine art high quality end result, it was just to demonstrate what can be achieved in the same time on which paper. For this demonstration I'm using the Faber Castell 9000 series, and I'm going to start with the Strathmore paper. To make this video of value for quite everyone, I chose papers that are available throughout the globe, so everywhere in the world you should be able to get at least some of these papers or some quite similar papers. So first one will be the Stonehenge paper, which has quite some texture to it. So as usual I have applied a harder pencil just to make the softer shadows and finer lines, but soon switched over to a 4B or HB pencil just to get more graphite on the paper, and I've blended it with my blending stump. Or you can also use a Q-tip or brushes or whatever actually you are familiar or most likely to blend with. Everything works quite well. I also used the Mono Zero eraser just to create fine highlights and to correct some lines. You can use any eraser, of course, kneaded eraser, pencils eraser, just a regular school eraser, whatever you have available, it will work everything the same. The Mono Zero is just great because it has a tiny tip, so you can create fine lines and sharp details with it. In the close-up of this video you can always see the small dots from the paper through the graphite, which will not be that visible in a normal distance view. You can get rid of them by adding more layers, so you get rid of the white dots, or blending a bit harder, but this would have needed more time, and as I had set myself a time limit of 30 minutes, this was my way to do it. And yeah, the more time you use for blending and adding layers, the more realistic it will look in the end, of course. The next paper is the Bristol 300 Vellum series. These are quite common papers. It has way less texture than the Stonehenge paper, but still some texture is left. The applying process of the pencils was quite similar. I added layers and blended and added more layers and created details and more layers and so on and so on. It went a bit smoother than on the Stonehenge paper, but overall spoken the process was quite similar to it. You can see a bit less of these small dots from the paper, I think, but the overall look, when you have a normal distance view to your drawing, it still looks the same. But it was a bit easier to apply the pencil because it was a bit less textured. Erasing also went well, so this was not a problem at all. And for this drawing I just started with a 4B and an HB pencil because I figured that applying the harder pencils first and increasing to the softer pencils did not make much sense for me for this kind of drawing. If I make a full art high class render portrait or whatsoever, I will start with the harder pencils always and increase depth and shadowing by going to the softer pencils step by step. But it was not much sense here. The third paper that I used was the Bristol 300 Smooth series, which is the smoothest paper of all the 6 papers that I've tested. The applying process of the charcoal was again the same. I used the 4B and the HB pencil just to create depth. I blended, I erased, I added more layers. This was just done the same as on the other papers. You can see less of these white dots in this drawing, especially when you zoom out again. And it was quite easy to blend and to add the pencil to the paper. So for me this was again the best paper to draw on. because I really don't like textured paper, but this is just my preference. So if you like textured paper more, then you might see it differently. But having done all the tutorials and all the mediums, this was a paper where everything worked quite well for me. If you are new to papers and don't know what to get, I would recommend using the Bristol smooth paper, as this can take all the mediums quite well. And it's quite cheap. Coming to the toned papers. Therefore I use the Strathmore Toned 10 and Strathmore Toned Grey paper. These have, as the name suggests, already a tan to it. The tanned paper is a beige one and the toned grey paper is, well, a grey one. It's a soft color, so it is not very dominant, but still visible, of course. As both papers worked quite the same from the applying technique, I will combine them again, as I did on the other tutorials as well. Applying process of the pencils was again the same by using a 4B and HB pencil, blending, erasing, adding more layers, erasing again, blending, and so on and so on. And the advantage of the toned papers is that you can use a white charcoal pencil as well, so to get a more dramatic look to it. You will not be able to add highlights that are that bright as on the white paper if you don't use the white charcoal, as the paper is tanned itself. So you can not have these bright highlights, but by using a white charcoal pencil or a white colored pencil, you can really make these contrasts brighter and better. And yeah, it makes things a bit easier because you already have this base color from your paper. So this one was quite nice. If you like these high contrasts, this is a great paper to work on. It's a bit thin for my taste as a paper itself, so it's a bit more fragile perhaps, but as a paper itself it worked really well, and I loved adding the contrast by using the white. I used charcoal for this. As these papers are not very expensive as well, I really recommend them for portraits, for example. It really makes a complete different look than a regular white paper. And it also saves some time, so these both papers needed less time, I think about 20 minutes or so for each drawing, with the same end result than the white papers were, just because you have the base color already on the paper. So if you use it for portraits, you do not need to concentrate on the mid-tone color because the paper is already toned, so you just have to concentrate on the shadows and the light areas. So this saves a lot of time and has a really cool effect when you watch it. The final paper that I used was the Canson Montval Aquarelle paper, which is a watercolor paper actually and has a typical watercolor texture to it. It is a bit rough textured. It's quite a thick paper, as it has to be to take the water and do not bend. And yeah, the process of applying the pencil was again the same. And you can see that this paper gives you the most textured look, I would say. So you still have these white dots in between. It does not look as smooth as the other papers. So I would not actually really recommend it for graphite. It works. It did not give me a hard time to do the drawing, but you cannot get as many fine details as you might get on the other papers. And yeah, it just does not look that high-end, perhaps, if you want to call it like this. Overall spoken, once I got the Montval, the Canson paper, I got a block with 100 sheets, I think. It was quite cheap. So if you have access to this paper and do other mediums as well, like watercolor or charcoal or whatever you use, go for it. It is a quite nice paper. But if you go for a small project, so A5 or A4 size, yeah, you might not be able to get as much details as you might get on the other papers. If you don't go for many details, feel free. It's nice to work on. So this concludes the tutorial. I hope this video was of any use for you. I would be happy if you give my video a like if you liked it, or write a comment if you have any questions or want me to test any additional papers. I have some more papers available, but did not want to make this video too long. And yeah, I would love you to subscribe to my channel and would be happy to see you in the next video. Have a great day everyone. Bye bye.